Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily Rosa. How are you guys doing? So today I am going to be talking about how I got my consulting full-time job. And for those of you guys who don't know, I have a full-time job lined up for me at a big consulting firm starting in October. And I'm super excited, and I'm really excited about sharing my journey and how I got my job, because hopefully you guys can take something away from this and also try to navigate your own experience to also get your dream job or a consulting job. So if you guys are interested in knowing how I got my full-time job, then make sure that you continue watching this video, because I'm basically going to be discussing step by step as to what I did, leading up to the recruiting process, what my recruiting process was, what I did before the interview, and ultimately how the interview went. And if you guys are interested in learning more about my post-grad life and college advice, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell button so you can receive notifications every time I post a new video. Alright, so let's get started with what I did leading up to the recruiting process. So I'm going to be talking about three main things that I thought were really important on my resume and that ultimately helped me get to that first round of interviews. So the first thing I will talk about is involvement. Being involved is something that I think is very important, because being involved in student organizations is something that will really help you grow both personally and professionally. And I'm not talking about just being members of a club, I'm talking about taking on leadership roles as either a director or as an executive. By taking on these roles, you learn so much about yourself, working with others, working in a team environment, dealing with problems, speaking with all types of people, managing your time, managing deadlines, managing other people. You honestly learn so much when you are involved. So if you aren't involved in any clubs, I highly recommend that you join an organization. And if you are a member, that's great, but I really highly push you and encourage you to apply for a directorship role, or there's so much you can learn by taking on these positions. And it has honestly been one of the most impactful and best learning experience that I had throughout my college career. Being involved also looks really good on your resume, and is something that companies definitely care about and always look at. Recruiters always want to see what you've done on campus, what clubs you're a part of, what roles you held, or what you did with that organization. Even in a job description, it will literally say word by word that they are looking for demonstrated leadership abilities, excellent interpersonal skills, or it'll say that they're looking for someone with strong academic performance and extracurricular activities. So being involved is very important for your personal growth, but also for getting that job that you want, because 99.9% of the time it will say in that job description that they are looking for people who have involvement and have those soft skills that you gain by being involved. And if you're wondering what clubs you should be a part of, I always recommend students to be a part of 2 clubs. And I always tell students that one of those clubs should always be dedicated to your professional development, and that other club can be focused on your social life. So let's just say that you're an accounting student, and let's just say that you really enjoy dancing. So join the accounting club, because that is obviously the club that corresponds to your major and the club that will help you professionally to get internships or full-time jobs. But if you also enjoy dancing, then you can also join the salsa club. So personally, I've always really liked having a balance of having a club for your social life and then having a club for your professional life. Now, the second thing that I think is really important in preparing for the recruiting process is in regards to skills. In case if you don't have many hard skills on your resume, the first thing that I recommend that you do is to look at that job description of that job that you want and see what hard skills they're looking for. On the job description, it'll most likely say what skills they're looking for or what experience they want the candidates to have. And I know, for example, in my role where I applied for a technology consulting job, it said that they were looking for candidates with experience and interest in technology, and it also said that they were interested in students who had taken classes in programming, business analytics, or business processes. And so for me, I have taken elective classes in our data science and operations department, and I took 2 classes, one that was about R programming and another that was about Python. And if your school doesn't offer these classes, then I highly recommend looking online and seeing what free online courses you can take. In my last video with productivity tips, I shared some links to Stanford's and Harvard's free online courses websites, so make sure to check that out, because there are literally free classes that you can take about Python, R, SQL. Another way I was also able to gain hard skills is through my internship experiences. Last summer, I had an internship as a data and analytics consulting intern, and in that role, in addition to learning about Python, I also learned about SQL and Tableau. So there are many different ways that you can gain skills. It's just a matter of being proactive, knowing what it is that you have to learn, and being excited to also learn and want to gain a new skill. Now, the third thing that I think is really important is having some sort of internship experience. Now, your internship experience doesn't necessarily have to be related to that full-time dream job that you want. I've seen people who have switched industries or were previously in marketing and then wanted to get into tech consulting, and they were able to make that transition. But what I really encourage is to honestly have any internship experience. I think having any internship experience is really good because it helps you nail down what it is that you want to do or what it is that you don't want to do. And it also gives you a lot of experience as to what it's like being a professional, what it's like working with teams or clients or customers, and just gives you more of that real world experience that'll be really important for preparing you for a full-time job. But definitely, if you can find, and if it's possible, if you can find an internship that is related to that full-time job that you want, I think it'll definitely benefit you and definitely show that this is the career that you're interested in and you have internship in that field because you enjoyed it and that you want to continue pursuing that field, but maybe just at a different company that is maybe larger or whatever it is. In regards to my experience, as I mentioned, last summer I had an internship in data analytics and it was at a mid-sized firm. But having that data background and having that experience at a mid-sized consulting firm, I felt really helped prepare me for getting that full-time job at a large consulting company in a technology consulting practice. It was related, I had the skills built up, and my experience really matched the criteria that they were looking for. So if you can find an internship that is related to that full-time dream job that you want, I think it'll definitely help you out. Okay, so now I'm going to get into talking about my recruiting experience. So my recruiting experience was different from that traditional college recruitment process that most students go through. Usually, the recruiting process takes place in the months between August to October, where in the months of August and September, students will be attending a lot of recruiting events, going to company events, networking events, and just, being involved in getting to know the company and getting to know people. And then by the end of September or early October will be the deadlines for applying for the internships or full-time job roles. And then through the month of October, they will interview you. And then by the end of October and November, you have to make your decision as to whether you're going to accept or reject that job offer. So that's the traditional recruiting experience. But for me, my full-time job recruiting experience happened at the ALPFA Convention. So I'm actually wearing my ALPFA t-shirt here to represent. For those of you guys who don't know about ALPFA, ALPFA stands for Association of Latino Professionals for America. And when I was getting my full-time job, I was part of the ALPFA USC chapter. So ALPFA has student chapters and they have professional chapters. And so if you are a student, then you can join the ALPFA organization at your university if they have a chapter. Most large universities will have an ALPFA chapter. So definitely keep an eye out and see if there's an ALPFA chapter at your school. And if there is, I highly recommend that you join. You do not have to be Latino to be a part of this club, and you do not have to be a business major. The organization is open to all students. And so back to the ALPFA Convention. The ALPFA Convention is a 5-day event that happens every year, usually during the first week of August. It is this huge networking and recruiting event where ALPFA members who are both students and professionals gather all together for 5 days in a particular city anywhere across the country. Last summer it was held in Nashville, Tennessee, and the summers before that it was in Las Vegas. And literally it is about 3,000 ALPFA members that get together, so it is just so many people, so many opportunities, and overall it is just an incredible event filled with lots of workshops and networking events that are designed for your leadership and career development. So the ALPFA Convention is made so students can go there, meet people, meet companies, and ultimately leave the convention with an internship or with a full-time job. And so the last day of the ALPFA Convention is this huge career fair that goes on basically all day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And there are literally 50 plus top companies that are there recruiting students for internships and full-time job opportunities. It is absolutely an amazing event, so if you can attend, I highly recommend going. It was honestly one of the most memorable and best experiences that I had. I also just want to note that from the statistics from the previous event, 62% of the attendees were professionals, 38% were students, and then 75% were Latino. So what this means is that there is basically a 2-to-1 ratio of professionals and students. So when you're there are so many professionals that you can meet from so many different companies. And also, although ALPFA does have the word Latino in its name, you do not have to be Latino to be a part of ALPFA, and you do not have to be Latino to go to this event. 75% of the attendees were Latino, but 25% were some other backgrounds. It is open to anyone, and if you are looking for a job, please go. So So as I mentioned, the ALPFA Convention was my recruiting experience. This is basically where I went to talk to professionals, talk to companies, and ultimately get my job. So now I'm going to get into what I did before the interview. So I started preparing for the interview about 3 weeks before the ALPFA Convention. For those of you guys who don't know, if you are recruiting and consulting, you have a behavioral interview, but then you also have a case interview. And case interviews can be challenging, so it is really important that you take the time to study, prepare, and just practice as much as you can. So I started preparing about 3 weeks before, and this was where I was doing research as to what the technology case interview would look like or what kind of behavioral questions they would ask. But it wasn't until probably 2 weeks right before the convention where I was really hustling, like studying every single night for this case interview, getting help, and just working my butt off every single day for those 2 weeks. And during that time, I had 2 mentors who really helped me out during this process, and if you are watching this video, then you know exactly who you are, and thank you, because I probably wouldn't be here talking about this if it weren't for you guys. But yeah, so I had 2 mentors who really helped me prepare, practice, and really just gave me a lot of tips as to what the interview was going to look like. So if possible, try to find mentors who have already gone through the consulting interview and know what it is like, so they can help you out and provide you with the best advice so you can go out there and kill the interview. In addition to preparing for the case, I also took the time to really learn about technology, learn all the buzzwords. Usually in any industry, there will always be terms that you've heard of multiple times, but you don't know exactly what it is. So make sure that you do your research, that you know what you're talking about. Additionally, I also took the time to read the newspaper. So during those 3 weeks, I was reading the Wall Street Journal or New York Times every single morning because I needed to be in the know of what is going on in business and technology. So whatever industry it is that you're in, make sure that you're doing research in what is going on in the news, what are the current events, because it may be an interview question or it may be something that will come up during candid conversations. So just make sure that you're reading up on what's going on and just know all the current events that are happening within your industry. So before I go into talking about what actually happened at the ALPFA Convention, I also just want to note that companies recruit differently at the ALPFA Convention. So there are many different timelines as to when you would actually fill out the job application or interview for that company. But now, jumping into my experience, going into the event, they had sent a list of companies that were going to be there. And so I basically targeted 4 companies, but there were 2 that I really wanted to target and focus my time on. So as I mentioned, there are many different workshops and networking events that go on during the 5 days of the convention. So whenever those 2 companies that I was recruiting for were having any event or workshop, I would make sure to be there. And sometimes those events would be at 7 a.m., but I would get up and I would be there because that was the company that I wanted to work for. So when you get that calendar, make sure that you see what events are going on, who they're hosted by, and make sure you're at the events of those companies that you really want to work for. Now, the next major part of the ALPFA Convention is networking. And networking is going to be so important for you to get that job. If I hadn't networked during those 5 days of the convention, I literally probably wouldn't have gotten my job, because so many of the people that I met that helped me get my job were the people that I met casually during the day and interacted with throughout the 5 days. And when it comes to networking, I have a few tips, but the first thing I'm going to say is be yourself. Being yourself is so important. I literally would not have gotten my job if I wasn't myself, because actually during my behavioral interview, a few days after I got my second round, I had a call with my interviewer from the behavioral interview. And he literally told me that I sounded almost like a robot. And the only reason why he recommended me for the second round was because he had met me on another day during the convention in a more natural setting, and he thought that I was great and that I spoke well and that I was just very natural, and he really liked that side of me. If he hadn't met me there and had only seen me during my interview where I was like a robot, I probably wouldn't have gotten the second round. So being yourself is very important. Other tips are to always stay professional, be genuine, do your best to make a genuine and real connection and relationship with that person. Make sure that you have your 30-second elevator speech nailed down. Have at least 5 questions in mind that you are ready to ask. Carry resumes and make sure that your resume is sharp. Carry a portfolio so that you're ready to take notes at any point in time. And then always make sure to ask for a business card, an email, or their LinkedIn profile. So those are like my major pro tips that I recommend that you do at every single networking event, and those were some of the things that I did during the ALPFA Convention that really helped me to ultimately get my job. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the actual interview process. So I received the job application about a week before the ALPFA Convention. And then during the convention, I was just networking, meeting people. But on the 4th day, the day before the career fair, I received an email with an interview time for the career fair day. So I remember my interview was at 10 a.m. and this was the first round. And the first round of interviews for my consulting job was one 30-minute behavioral interview. interview. And then after my interview, I didn't really hear back about anything until a week later after the convention. I was sent an email about the second round of interviews, which would be held the following week. Now keep in mind at this point, it's a week after the convention, so I'm no longer in Nashville, I'm back at home, and they told me that the second round of interviews would be held in a different city. So they flew me out to that city, and my second round consisted of 2 45-minute case interviews and 1 30-minute behavioral interview. Now in regards to the case interview, so as I mentioned, I applied for a technology consulting job, so my case interview was obviously related to technology. And I also want to mention that for anyone who is recruiting in consulting and is preparing for that case interview, always keep in mind that the case interview is not about having the right answer, it's about how you think and what your thought process is towards solving the problem and providing a solution. So that day during my interviews, I remember my first interview was at 8 a.m. and I believe I was already done by 10:30 a.m. And later that day at 6 p.m. I got a call saying that I got the job. I got the job, guys. I was so happy. I think I was like about to cry. I felt that everything that I had worked for had finally came to fruition, and I was just so happy, so excited. I texted my mentors, I called my parents, and it was definitely one of the greatest days. And then for the post-interview, the company basically gave me 3 months to make a decision as to whether or not I was going to accept or reject the job, but I ended up accepting it, and now I have my full-time job at a large consulting firm that I will be starting in October. So woo! So that was basically my entire recruiting experience and how I got my consulting job. I felt that it was very detailed, so I hope that it'll be helpful to you guys. If you guys have any questions about my recruiting experience or about getting a consulting job, then make sure to drop them in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to help you out and provide answers to all your questions. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to give me a like. And if you want to watch more videos revolving my post-grad life and any college advice, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell button so you can receive notifications next time I post a new video. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys for watching.